So all I need to do is just simply plug this in, and you see that it automatically detects it. It's programming the device. It's going to do the check and erase.
Hey guys, welcome to Embedded Toolbox, the video interview series where we try to save the world by solving one engineering challenge at a time. And today we have back Shawn Prestridge from IAR Systems to help walk through the third and final installment of our secure development series with IAR. How are you doing today, Shawn?
Doing quite well, Brandon, and yourself?
Doing very well.
Good.
So we've gone through C-Trust, we've gone through how to protect your IP and then how to create secure encrypted applications, but now we're at the final stage where we're looking at actually going into production. So when you're in production, what are some of the nuances that developers need to be aware of in order to put a secure product out to market?
Well, that's one of the cool things about our product and how it works is that it's incredibly simple. What you do is you create from the application space, you create something that's called a trusted application package, and then the person pulls that uh, into a production package. So that trusted application package then gets signed with the OEM's key, and the OEM key is something that we provide to the original equipment manufacturer when they use C-Trust. And once they encrypt it, then they take the public certificate of the programmer that's going to ultimately be used to program the devices, and they encrypt it in such a way that only that programmer will be able to read the encrypted package. So it's actually fairly seamless. So you just need the public certificate from the programmer. You need an OEM certificate from IAR Systems, and just the trusted application package that the developer already creates. I mean, it's fairly simple and takes maybe just a few minutes to create it. And then once you create it, the cool part is because it's all encrypted, you don't have to do any special delivery mechanisms to get it over to the manufacturer. You can just email it because nobody can read the contents of the package. Only the HSM that's on that programmer has the capability of doing that. And I'm oversimplifying it just a little bit because a lot of times in contract manufacturing, they actually have multiple programmers. So there's a facility management system that will load balance between different programmers. So instead of targeting a specific programmer, you can also target that facility management system, which is also provided by IAR Systems. And what we can do is from that management system, we can allow you to load balance between the different programmers. But if you're doing low volume production, we actually have a secure desktop programmer that shows you or allows you to do that low volume production. So if you're doing hundreds of units a year, maybe 1,000 or so, you can actually do this with the secure desktop programmer. And that's what customers typically use when they're making prototype boards, or they're making engineering units that the developers are going to use to work in a secure workflow. Typically, they'll take our secure desktop programmer and they'll provision and create devices from that point. So you can actually do low volume production with our secure desktop programmer as well. And in fact, if you look at how the SDP works and how you create the packages and sign them and whatnot, it's exactly the same process as what you do when you go to full-blown manufacturing. So it's pretty simple. Sounds a little bit complicated, but they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, so maybe a video is worth 1,000,000 words. But when you see it in action, you look at it and go, wow, that's incredibly simple. That's not hard at all.
Well, let's dive right in. Let's see those million words.
Okay. So where we left off is we had created an application, and then we created a secure boot manager and enabled security on that application. And then we were downloading and doing our regular development activities. We had provisioned the board. It had a secure boot manager. We were now working in a secure workflow when the developer does a download and debug. the firmware image is automatically encrypted, and then it gets bootloaded by the SBM. So we saw how all that works in a development organization. And so what I have here is that same application that we have already enabled security, and now we're ready to move to production. So the first step we do when we want to move to production is we're going to, in the application, we're going to choose this export application. And what we're going to do is create a trusted application package. So what we do is we pick an output directory, and I'll just put it in the same one as my secure boot manager for right now. And then we give it a file name. So we're going to call it mytap for trusted application package. And then we export it, and done. The developer is done. Now they pass that trusted application package over to the security officer, who may want to use a production security context, which may be different. So if you are changing your security context because you're using different ones for the engineering side versus what you're going to ultimately use for production, and that's a good security practice, what the developer will do is pass that trusted application package over to the security officer, and then the security officer takes it from there. Additionally, if you want to use that same security context to go out to full production, the developer can actually do this next step themselves. But here's what happens when you're ready to actually go to production. I'm going to go over to my Secure Boot Manager project. And now that we're in the Secure Boot Manager project, I can go into the security menu, and I can now take this option for export direct to production. So when I click this, it asks if I want to make this. I'm going to choose no for the example, because I've already actually made this. I get this warning message that tells me, hey, the security context that you've set up are not optimal for production. It tells me the things that I haven't done. I haven't locked down the debug port. I haven't chosen to secure the device. That's because I'm just doing a demonstration. If you really are going to production, you really do want to make these changes in your security context. But for right now, I'm just going to leave it the way it is for demonstration and tell it okay. So what I do is I provide it the location of that trusted application package. So now I just find that trusted application package that I just created, or if it's been sent to me, I just use that. So I just open up that trusted application package and tell it okay. So then I need to provide the security context that was used in that production, in that trusted application package, which may be my pre-production, and I'm going to change it. So I just click that here. I go to next. Now the OEM identity is something that IAR Systems provides to each OEM. So it's going to be a unique certificate along with a passphrase that's used to access it. So I have an identity that is unique to me, and I'll show it to you in just a second. So my OEM is IAR Systems, and I'm just going to click OK. And then my passphrase is actually stored somewhere else. I've got it copied to my clipboard. And I just paste this in here, the passphrase that unlocks this certificate. And then now I need to provide the public certificates that are either for the secure desktop programmer or the facilities management system or the end programmer that I'm using. So I'm going to use the one from my secure desktop programmer. And here's my SDP certificates. Now, that can be, if you don't have the certificates file for your secure desktop programmer, as part of the secure deploy software, you can actually have it export the certificates for you. And the contract manufacturer can do the same. They'll be able to provide you the certificates file. So I just click OK. And then I can do set my production count. So let's say I want to allow 10 copies of this software to be programmed into various devices. And you can set that production count to be whatever you want it to be. And then I just click next, and the product name is going to be My Awesome Application. and I can set an output folder. And I'm going to put this in my same root directory where my application is. And then I just export, and boom, you're done. So all you need is you need your OEM certificate, which is provided by IAR Systems. You need the public certificate of the programmer you're trying to reach, and then that trusted application package that the developer can create for you easily. And now I've created this exported package. It's fully encrypted. I can just email this package out to my contract manufacturer, or I can use my secure desktop programmer to actually program it onto the board. So if you'd like, I can show you how that SDP works.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Okay. So here we have the Secure Desktop Provisioner software running, and as you can see on my desk, I have the Secure Desktop Provisioner. It's approximately the size of a paperback novel, so not really huge, but allows you to connect up to 4 different programming heads simultaneously to it. Currently, I have just a single iJet here connected, but let's see what it looks like when we import the package that we created. So what I need to do is just import the My Awesome application package, and this will take just a few seconds for it to be able to identify it and add it to the product list. So it has to strip off all the encryption, and now that we have this loaded, we're actually ready to create this. So now that I've added this, you can see that I have an authorized count of 10, and I can basically create as many copies up to that authorization count, which is 10. So let's say I want to produce 2, and I can click Start Production. So you can see I'm ready for production now after a few seconds. And so now we're starting production. You notice that we have an option to abort. I have this box checked for auto programming, so as soon as I plug in the board and it detects that there's a device, it will start erasing it and then programming it. So all I need to do is just simply plug this in, and you see that it automatically detects it. It's programming the device. It's going to do the check and erase, which can take a few seconds because it's also verifying the erase right now to make sure that it truly is a blank device. And now we're programming, and as you can see, the programming and the verification takes place really quickly. So you're ready to remove the device. So if I remove the device now, it's waiting for another device to be inserted, so we can go through that same process again. Even though it's reprogramming the same device, you can see how quickly it works. So if you have 4 different heads connected simultaneously, it can basically program about as fast as you can plug and unplug the board. And that's pretty much it.
Well, that's all very good, Shawn, and just sort of bringing this entire series back around. Um, to some people it may be obvious, to others it may not be so obvious. Do you need this secure provisioning element really, or is this just one of those hyper paranoia situations where it's like, oh my god, something could happen between you and your manufacturer? Or is it more to guard against some of those real life things that we talked about in the first episode with, wow, somehow I sent a copy of my project over to my OEM, and all of a sudden there were different variations of it being manufactured all over the world?
Yeah, well, you actually just answered your own question there, Brandon. Yeah, and that's it's a really interesting question because we've had some customers who've told us that they've had versions of their product available in Asia before it was available in the United States, even though the product was only ever intended to be available in the United States. So that goes to show you that protecting your intellectual property is a real problem. And so when you do encrypted firmware delivery and you only trust the FIPS certified HSMs like our secure desktop programmer or the HSMs that we provide to go into the mass programmers to actually do the decrypting and to control the number of devices that are allowed to be produced, that ensures that you don't lose money because of overprotection or overproduction. And you trust the hardware level security on the devices that you have to keep the hackers away from being able to read the firmware off the device and being able to divine your algorithms that you've worked so hard on. So it's always a cat and mouse game, but as we're seeing, a lot of the silicon manufacturers are coming up with cool ways to make sure that you have higher and higher levels of security. So there's questions now about, well, how do you know that the programming head is really attached to a real piece of silicon? And a lot of different silicon manufacturers have approached that problem differently, but they have things that ensure that the programming head really is talking to an authentically produced piece of silicon. So there's no way to even execute a man-in-the-middle attack between the programming head and the device if you're using the correct versions of silicon and whatnot. So there's always ways to up your security game. And some people do view it as a little bit of paranoia, but it's always paranoia until you get bitten by it.
Of
And once you
course.
get bitten, and then you're like, wow, I should have done this. It would have been so easy. So some of our best customers are the ones that unfortunately already got bitten by it. And this enables a very robust level of security and protects your intellectual property, which you've worked so hard to differentiate yourself from the rest of the competition. So, why wouldn't you spend a little bit of extra money to imbue it with the highest levels of security? And when you do that, it also encourages developers, as we were talking about previously, that when you start with security on your application from the inception, now your developers have all these security assets that they can use while they're developing the application. So it encourages them to do things like message authentication when they get things from another device or from the OEM. Hey, am I really talking to an authentic device, or is this some hacker? So it helps the developers to create more secure applications. So it's not just intellectual property protection from overproduction, but it's also intellectual property protection from making sure that you're only talking to the right people. So there's a lot of cool things that are available in this product, and it's just incredibly simple to use. That's the part that I like. In fact, I heard one customer say it's stupidly simple, and that's the best kind of thing you can have. That it's that easy and makes it where it's not a burden to add that level of security to your device. It just works.